answers session will continue. So for today, right? I mean, this is our agenda, and I mean, I request you to be on mute for today's session. I mean, so if you have any questions in between, right? Uh, of course, you can make a note of it, and then we can discuss at the end, or you can ping those questions in the chat. I will definitely address at the end for sure. Okay, and okay. So let's begin with the first point, that is what is performance testing. So I would like to open a slide for this. Okay, so hope you guys are able to see this slide. So what is I mean, before we discuss what is performance testing, let's begin and try to understand what is a software testing all about. So software testing is mainly divided into functional testing and non-functional testing. Okay, so functional testing uh, is nothing but testing the functionality of the application. Okay, so for example, I mean, let's discuss in terms of software first, and then I'll explain you a different generic example as well. So let's say I ask you to test, I mean, if I want you to test a software application, let's say some login functionality. Okay, so let's say there is some application like this, a sample application, something like this. I ask you to, test the login functionality for this application. What would we do generally? So we launch the application, then we log into the application. So you enter some credentials basically, and then you click on login button here, right? And then you log in successfully. I mean, if you enter valid username and password, obviously obviously the login will be successful, right? And then you log off. That means you tested the login functionality by giving a valid username and a password. Of course, you can do a negative testing like by giving some invalid username and invalid password, or a valid username and invalid password, and so on. Okay, but the main point is that we are actually testing the login functionality here. Okay, now now the same thing. Okay, if you see this slide here, so testing the functionality of the application. Functional testing is nothing but testing the functionality of the application. It could be any functionality. Okay, I've just taken example of login. Okay, and then within this functional testing, uh, you might have heard about these tools which are obviously pretty famous in the market, like Selenium, UFT, etc. Okay, these are functional automation testing tools. Okay, so whatever the functionality you have, if you want to automate them, you use these tools. Okay, Selenium, UFT, etc. But when it comes to the non-functional testing, when it comes to the non-functional testing, this will primarily focus on some of the other aspects like performance, security, usability, etc. Okay, so the performance testing is part of the non-functional testing. Okay, so the tools that we use here is LoadRunner, JMeter, Gatling, so many are there. Okay, so these are the most widely used tools in the market. Okay, now for the same application, if you want to try and understand this term, or if you want to try and understand this term specifically, okay, with this example, so let's say the same login functionality, if I want to verify for performance. So basically what you do, you launch the application, you enter some valid username and password and log in. So the important thing here for a performance tester is, once you enter username and password and click on submit button, how fast the user is able to navigate from one page to another page, or how fast this home page loaded. Okay, so this entire page, how much time it has taken, okay, to load, or how much time it has taken for the user to log in. So the timing is important. The time is important. How much time it has taken for the page to load is very, very important with respect to performance testing. Okay, so performance testers primarily focus on the speed, okay, how fast the user is, how fast the user is able to navigate from one page to another page. Okay, so that is a primary aspect for the performance tester. Okay, now this is from an application point of view, and a small a small example. Let's take one more generic example. So let's say you have like you are in a shopping mall. Okay, let's say that there is a mall and you are on the ground floor. Now you want to go to third floor. What would you do generally? You look for an escalator, or lift, what you call lift, and some places you call escalator, some places you call lift, right? So you go to the escalator or lift, and you go inside the lift or escalator, and then press 3 button, right? And then you will go to third floor. And if I want you to test that escalator or lift functionality, then what would you do? You, as usual, you go inside the lift, press 3 button, and make sure that it is going to the third floor only. Okay, that means whatever the button you press, it should go to that particular floor, right? that is that is nothing but testing the functionality, whether is it going to the right floor or not. If you click 4, is it going to fourth floor or not, is what you have to verify. That means you are verifying the functionality, the functional aspect of it. Okay, now when it comes to the performance, what would you do? So the thing is, when it comes to performance, okay, you go inside the lift or escalator, and then you press 4 or 3 button, and then you see how much time it is taking to go to third floor or fourth floor. How much time it is taking to go to third floor or fourth floor is what you have to verify, isn't it? That's the performance, right? It's not only that you are going to third floor, but within how much time you are reaching third floor is also important, right? So one more important point with respect to the same example is how many people, or how many people can max be accommodated in the lift or an escalator. Like there will be a text written over there, right? Like max 10 people or max 8 people or something like that. So not only when a single person is there on the lift, but at the same time we also try and test the lift capacity as well. That means, um, like when max people are on the lift, okay, when max people are on the lift, and then you press 3 button, then how much time it is taking to go to third floor is also important from performance testing point of view. Okay, so all in all, functional testing will primarily focus on the functionality, whereas the non-functional testing, especially the performance, will focus on the speed aspect, the performance aspect of the application. Okay, so the tools that we primarily use for performance testing is LoadRunner and JMeter. I mean, we have other tools also like NeoLoad, Gatling, etc. But these two are the most widely used tools in the market. Okay, so so hope you understood the major difference between the functional testing and non-functional testing. Okay, so as a performance tester, our primary focus will be on the speed aspect, like how much time it is taking for the page to load, how much time it is taking for a user to uh, navigate from one page to another page is high priority for us. Okay, I'm not saying that we will not, I mean, I'm not saying that the functionality is not at all important. It is important, but then by the time we test the application for performance, mostly the functionality might have been already tested. That means this will come first. I mean, this will be tested first. If this is working, then only it is, I mean, it is good to test for performance. If this itself is not working, there is no point in running this test also, right? If the functionality itself is not working, how can you test the application for performance? Not possible, right? So that's the reason. Of course both are important, but because we focus more on performance, this is more important for us. Okay, so this is about the performance testing. at a very high level. We will discuss in detail again in our upcoming sessions. And one more thing, if someone is asking you why a performance testing is important, okay, if someone is asking you, or you have a doubt like why performance testing is important, how important is performance testing in the IT world? Look, it's very, very important. Without performance testing, um, there will be, I mean, if performance testing is not done, there are high chances that it can impact the organization's revenue directly. Okay, how? See, for example, I'm just quoting one example. There are a lot of examples like that, but I'm just taking one example. If you remember in 2013 or 2014, uh, I think that was the first time when one of the e-commerce application announced a big sale. I don't remember exactly. It's a big sale or a festival sale, something like that. So that was the first time they entered. They announced it. They started that. So, for example, I think in 2013 and 14, I guess, yeah. So they started a big sale around say let's say 12 p.m. or so. What happened on that day? The number of users accessing that e-commerce application was almost like so many times more than the normal user pattern. Okay, so what happened? Suddenly, the application didn't respond. The application crashed because more number of users tried to access the application, because assuming that they had some good offers or something like that, because that was a big sale, right? So what happened? It impacted the application. Okay, why? Because more number of people access the application than the normal days. Okay, so what happened? The application didn't respond, or the application crashed. So obviously it will directly impact the revenue, right? So that's the importance of performance testing. So without performance testing, any important application, any application in fact, should not go to live. That means should not be deployed for the real users to test. Okay, so if performance testing is not done, and then and then if it is deployed to production for the real users to use, there is a very high chance that it can have some existing performance issues which we didn't look into, and then it will come up in the real time, and then it will have an impact on the business. Okay, so here you see, if performance testing is not done, applications might face problems like slowness, the pages loading forever, inconsistency, and may further result in business loss. Okay, just imagine you are trying to access some bank account. Okay, let's assume that the bank account is very, very slow. Like, you're not able to transfer amount, you're not able to pay credit card bill, you're not able to download statement or anything. Imagine the amount of loss that the bank would incur, right? Right, so similarly, same thing, like you can take any example, like let's say you are using any food delivery application. Okay, imagine that you are not able to order food, or there is some lag in the application, you are not able to make payment. Like that, if you have those sort of performance issues, it will directly impact the revenue, because what happens once the user is not interested anymore, the user will switch to some other application. So yeah, let's say there is some email account for you. Okay, you are trying to attach some documents and send an email. The process is very slow, it is not able to attach documents at all on time. Okay, so you will see, for the first time you will see, second time you will see, third time you will see, and then what will happen? One day you'll get fed up and you will switch to some other application and start using emails, sending emails from that application. Okay, similarly gaming also, if you're playing any games, and if the game is stuck somewhere, or it's freezing, it's not responding, reason could be anything, but if there is some performance issue, the user will not be having any further interest if it is continuously occurring. Okay, and then that there is a high chance that the user will switch to any other application similar to that gaming functionality, right? So that's the reason applications having performance issues might directly result in a business loss as well. That's the reason performance testing is very, very important. Okay, and also I mentioned the first point here. The goal of performance testing is to find performance bottlenecks rather than finding functional bugs. So this is done by a separate team. Okay, so this functional testing is done by a separate team, what we call as manual testing or functional testing team. Okay, and our primary focus will be on this to identify the performance issues. Okay, sometimes in some projects you have to do both this and this. It depends, very rarely, but depends. But nowadays it's more like, performance testing is a separate team, like, working with different set of applications, okay, within the organization. Okay, so so that's what performance testing is all about. I can take a like 30-second pause and take your questions. If you have any questions, I hope you understood like what is the basic difference between a functional testing and a non-functional testing, especially the performance testing. Okay, so any questions? If you have any questions, you can ping in the chat, or you can just make a note of it. You can ask me right away, but then I'm okay if you ping in the chat as well. Okay, now with respect to performance testing only, we have multiple tools in the market, right? Like LoadRunner, JMeter, okay, Gatling, NeoLoad, and so on. Okay, every tool has its own advantages and disadvantages, obviously. But as I said, LoadRunner and JMeter are the most widely used tools in the market. Okay, now uh, if anyone has any doubts with respect to LoadRunner versus JMeter, I can answer at the end in the Q&A session. But because this course is primarily about LoadRunner, let's try to understand the LoadRunner architecture first. If you have any questions with respect to the tools like LoadRunner and JMeter, if you want some comparison or what, we can discuss at the end. Okay, so let's focus on LoadRunner architecture first. Okay, so to explain the LoadRunner architecture, okay, okay, so hope you guys are able to see the screen. One second. Yeah. So 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 this load runner architecture, I would like to derive by uh, starting with some questions. Okay. Uh, so let's say okay, one second. So let's say we have an application. Okay. Let's take any banking application. For example, any banking application or banking website. Now, if I ask you to do a performance testing for the banking application, what would like let's say with 500 users or 200 users, right? So because performance testing is all about testing with more number of users, right? Like I said previously, I said with when I took the example of an escalator or the lift, I already told you that in the lift there they will mention like max 8 people, max 6 people, something like that. So obviously the testing would have been done, the performance testing would have been done with max people on board, right? So when max people on board, then how the lift or escalator is responding? Is it going to third floor on time, or is it stucking somewhere? Okay, that's what they generally test. Similarly, in software application perspective, if I ask you to test a banking application, let's say with 500 users, what will you do? How will you test a bank application with 500 users? Okay, that means at the same time all the 500 users should be performing some action on the bank application, right? Like some might transfer money, some might download statement, some might pay credit card bill, right? Different users perform different actions, but all the 500 users will be active on that banking application website. Okay, now if I ask you to test the same thing, how would you start with? Will you bring 500 people and give them 500 laptops and ask them to log in to bank application and perform different actions like paying credit card bill, transferring money, and so on. Will you do that? Is it possible, by the way?
No, in this situation, we will create virtual users to test the application.
So, yep. So, the thing is, see, let's say, imagine you can bring, okay, let's say, imagine you can bring 500 people, give them 500 laptops, and ask them to log in, and then, you know, perform some different actions, and you can monitor the performance. Okay. But what if I ask you to test with 5,000 users? 500 users, that's fine. Okay. Worst case, you tried your best. But what if I ask you to test with 5,000 users? You cannot bring 5,000 users and give them laptops and all that stuff, right? It's not possible. That's the reason in the load runner architecture, you have a component called load generator. Okay. So this component is primarily responsible for generating virtual users or simulating virtual users. Okay. So these virtual users mimic the same behavior as a normal user do. Okay, if a normal user is transferring money or paying a credit card bill, that's fine. The virtual user will also do the same thing. Okay, how and all that is different, but the virtual user has the capability to mimic the human actions like clicking a link, clicking a button, okay, selecting a value from a drop down list, and so on. Okay, so the load generator is a component. Basically, these are highly configured machines. These load generators are some highly configured machines which are used to generate or simulate virtual users for us. Okay. Now, if I want to test with 4,000 users, yes, I can generate or simulate 4,000 users. If I want to test with 3,000 users, yes, I can. If I want to test with 10,000 users, yes, I can. But maybe instead of one load generator, I might use two load generator machines. Okay, so that's the difference, because even though load generator is capable of simulating users, but it also has some limit, right? Because of its configuration, because of its RAM, CPU, and all that stuff, it has its limitations. It can max support some x number of users. So beyond that, if you want to test, you need to add one more load generator, like that. So you can increase the number of load generators depending on the requirement. Okay, so, but the basic concept is load generator is primarily responsible for simulating or generating virtual users. Okay. Now, let's say you have virtual users. Let's say you have virtual users. Now, if you want to test the banking application, what are the primary scenarios? Let's tell any one scenario, one important scenario for a bank application. Is it transfer money? Can I take transfer money as one of the important scenario, important functionality, for which the performance testing is mandatory, right? So for performing or executing this functionality, what are the steps to reproduce? Anyone? So you say launch bank application. These are the steps to reproduce, right? Okay. Launch application. Then you log into the application. You log into the application. Okay. And then uh, you select the beneficiary, then you enter amount, and let's say click transfer. Okay, and then you log out. These are the steps to reproduce for the transfer money. Now, if I want to test the performance for this functionality, these are the steps I need to execute. Okay, now how will the users or the virtual users which I simulated using load generator, how will those users execute these steps? So there should be some component which should generate a script for us, okay, for the required functionality. That component should be able to assist us in generating a script so that the users can run it. Okay, so that component which is primarily responsible for developing or recording or generating the scripts for the required functionality, is called Vusion. Okay, Vusion is a component which is used to record or generate, okay, the script for the required functionality, so that the virtual users can reuse it. Okay, so the virtual users can run that particular script n number of times. Okay, so that is called Vusion. Now you have virtual users ready. Now you have the script, you have script ready. Then what is the next step? You have to execute those scripts. Okay, you have to execute those scripts with the help of these virtual users generated by load generator. So for that, uh, to sh- there is a component called controller or performance center. Okay, so whatever the scripts that we develop here, we upload it into controller. Okay, so whatever the scripts that we develop in Vusion, we upload it into controller or performance center, and then we can trigger the execution. Okay, we can trigger the execution, and then once the execution is completed, okay, the result, you need to analyze the result, right? So to analyze the result, you have another component called analysis. So this component is primarily responsible for analyzing the detailed results. So this analysis component is very important again. It will give us detailed analysis of the test that you have executed, including various graphs, okay, and various metrics. Okay, so all in all, these are the different components at a very high level: load generator, Vusion, controller or performance center, and analysis. Okay, there is something called agent process, which will act as a bridge between controller and load generator. We will discuss that in the upcoming session. I'll explain you in detail again. Okay, so all in all, these are the components, guys: load generator, Vusion, controller or performance center, analysis. Any questions here? So did you understand the load runner architecture?
Sir, do we need coding language
Yes.
for this?
Yes, correct. A good question. I will, yes, it is required, but I will elaborate the answer in some time from now. Okay. So at the end, like when we discuss question and answers, right? I will
Mhm.
definitely elaborate the answer for you. Yeah, I'll give you the answer. But yes,
Okay.
it is, in short, yes, it is required.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Rishik,
Yeah,
sorry to.
please.
See, let's suppose you said, right, by using the virtual user generator, we will create the
I'm
script.
sorry. Could you please be a bit louder? I'm not able to hear you.
Am I audible,
Let me
Rishik?
check if my volume is increased. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Mm, yeah, go ahead. I think so. Yeah.
Right. Now, as you said, right, so by using the virtual user generator, we will create the script. And on top of that, we will sending all the uh, users by using the load generator, right?
Correct.
Right. Now let's suppose I have an application. I have a different modules in application. Now let's suppose using the virtual user generator, I created all the scripts that I
Mhm.
want to keep the or sending the user different users to the different modules. Okay. So in
Yeah,
that case, how load generator will manage all these users for the different modules of the different scripts.
that we will take care in the controller and performance center. So you will have different modules or different sections or different functionalities. So for which module, how many users you want to use for testing, you can control that, or you can define that in the controller and performance center when you create a load test scenario. See, when you once you once you develop the script, you upload the script into controller and performance center. There we actually create a scenario: what type of test you want to execute, what type of test you want to configure, with how many users you want to run. Okay, how many load generators you want it, I mean, okay, and then for how long you want to run, you want to run for 1 hour or you want to run for 3 hours, right? So all that configuration we will do in the controller or performance center. That is possible.
So basically, you are saying that the controller is a bridge between your virtual user generator and the load generator.
No, 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 no. Agent process, there is some other component called agent process which acts as a bridge between controller and load generator. So if you go to the diagram again, okay, so if you see this diagram, so what will happen, here we develop the scripts and then those scripts we will upload here, okay, and here what will happen, we will configure a scenario, we will create a scenario here, what type of test you want to run. Let's say for transfer money scenario, I want to run with 30 users or let's say 300 users, okay. Or let's say download statement is there, for download statement I want to run with 500 users, okay. Or let's say pay credit card bill, so paying credit card bill, let's say I want to run with 1000 users. So for each of those functionalities I can configure a different set of users here in the controller and performance center, and then I can trigger execution. So once I trigger execution, what will happen, this controller will send all the scripts to this load generator machine with the help of uh, something called agent process, okay, with the help of agent process, and the actual execution happens here, okay. So when once you upload all the files, we create a scenario, whole scenario here, and then trigger